Hey guys, this is Mel, and I'm back to talk about the 100, episode 708, titled Anaconda, which premiered Wednesday, July 8th, 2020 on the CW. I'm recording roughly 45 minutes after the episode is aired, so huge spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the episode already, please go do so first, and then come back and see what I have to say about the episode. My other video reminders are up on screen. Take a moment to remind yourselves of those. Before we get right into a quick YouTube shout outs to Arya and Kahani again for their comments in 706. I believe I missed one of them when I gave a shout out to you in my previous video, so thank you for your 3 for that video. Mr. Legendary AO for both your comments in episode 6 and episode 7 videos for that. Thank you. Thank you to the comment for Ronan Gallagher. Thank you for the 707 comment. I truly appreciate it, and thank you for finding my video. Hopefully, if you go check back now, I would have replied back to you. Thank you as well to Elvis Ibrahimofsky. Hopefully I said that right, for your 707 comment. I replied to you before recording, so thank you for your comment. And then also, thanks to Ben Dover for your link about the synopsis. I do appreciate the extra step forward. But it seems we do not get Bellamy in this episode, despite what the synopsis stated. I found that regardless of whether he appears or not, it still states that he appears. I think it's just because he's part of the series regular cast. He's just always going to be mentioned regardless. But again, if he actually is mentioned, we don't know if that's going to be present day Bellamy or if that's going to be a flashback or an archive version of him. But we don't see him in this episode, unfortunately. But understandably so. So let's get right into this episode. I'm not going to time it, but I'm going to try to look at the clock and just try not to go over. I'll try to aim for 20 minutes. Write that down, which will put me at 10:10. But I definitely hope not to go over by 10, by 30. Okay, timer down. Sorry. But let's get right into it with what happened in this episode. So timeline-wise, technically, for our characters, it continues straight where 707 ended off, and that's with Clark and the others coming from Nikera onto Bardo and being in that anomaly stone room with Gabriel. So that's kind of where we left off, though. Although the majority of the episode does flash back to the year 2052 and 2054. It doesn't name the date specifically in this episode, but in the producer preview or insider given by the creator, Jason Rothenberg, he did state that the day that the missiles dropped on Earth happened on May 10th, 2052. So that's kind of your start date, I guess you could say. And then the episode itself, when it comes to the flashbacks, it takes back, it deals with the May 10th, 2052, and then it jumps to 2 years later, and then, so 2054, and then it also does like a 5-day time jump as well. So there's that as well. The episode reminder, though, is the fact that not only is this meant to be, well, Anaconda in itself is supposedly code for missiles in the air, which references back to the whole nuclear apocalypse happening or the first prime fire occurring. And then also just the fact that this was meant to be the backdoor pilot for the prequel spin-off that they're trying to get greenlit. So because of that setup, because of that, I already know that I'm not going to get a lot of scenes with our regular occurring cast of characters. It's pretty much the bare minimum. Maybe we'll get one scene with them, and then the rest of it will take place with all the characters that are meant to be part of the spinoff, which is what we get in this episode, because with Clark and the others, we really only get 2 scenes with them in the entire episode, and that is the opening scene and the closing scene of the episode. So just keep in mind with that, because they are trying to be this as the launching point for it. That is why we get so little of our characters. Now, the objective, because of that, the objective for the episode is slightly different. For our present-day characters, this is a chance for us to get answers about what happened when Pride Fire first happened, and also what happened to the second Dawn cult, which apparently wasn't a cult. But we initially get the answers as to how the Grounder culture started, why the bunker was initially completely empty when it was first opened up in season 4, why there was no bodies or anything like that. We do get answers from that. But also the objective of the episode for the flashbacks or the spin-off characters, is the survival, essentially. Well, I guess isn't that the full reason for every episode of the 100? But for them, it is surviving from a society what we're used to in a normal everyday scenario, now having them be pushed into an apocalypse scenario. So that's something there. So huge episode breakdowns or storylines, if you will. Technically, it's either split between one taking place on Earth, which is the whole flashback scenario, which is probably 90% of the episode. And then the second storyline is on Bardo, which is present day, which is like the remaining 10%, which is with our characters. So with that, I will start with the flashbacks Earth. So as I said, we start off on May 10th, 2052. This is the day where the missiles drop. This is the day when the bunker is filled to 92% capacity. This is where we get to meet the Bill's family, the Cadogan family, and how he is the leader of this group that was meant to preserve the human race. How his two kids, Callie and Reese, are there. How his either wife or ex-wife, I don't know. It seemed like they were separated, but Grace was there as well. But we get to see that, how they deal with the end of the world happening. And then it jumps into 2 years later within the bunker. And this is significant because this is when Becca lands from the Ark and her time on the Polaris, which we saw in episode 307 with the flashbacks there. We see her landing and being brought into the bunker, and this is where she introduces the Nightblood Serum. This is also introducing her connection or her ability to understand the anomaly stone due to the flame that she has. But by the end of that, plus we get from Becca's landing, we get some time, and then she spends 5 days in isolation, and then she's executed by burning at the stake when she refuses to give up the flame. But with Becca's Nightblood Serum, Callie takes August and the other kids and their families that want out of the bunker. She gives them the serum, and they all go to ground, or they go topside, and they become what we know as the original grounders that started the whole thing. To the point that, hold on. All right. So then while this is happening, Bill takes the remaining members of the residents inside the bunker. He takes them through the anomaly bridge, which is, again, the reason why Clark and the others never found any bodies inside the bunker when they first found it in season 4. So there's that. We also do find out, I'll say it now because it's connected, but we found out that the grounder language, or the Trigisduslig, I have no idea how to say it, but grounder speak, name is up on screen. But that we find out is actually created by Callie. It was a language she had created when she was a kid. She also told Becca that she learned Latin so she would be able to create her own language. So we find out from that. So that is something there. Also, because of it, we see that Reed and his guards within the Second Dawn cult, they are called disciples. So that's probably extended to when Bill takes his disciples to the through the anomaly stone. So that is something there. Also, when Callie takes a bunch of kids, she actually... No, I'll mention that later. Yeah, I'll mention the rest of it later. But, so that's pretty much it. Now, with Bardo and present day, like I mentioned, there's only 2 scenes, the opening scene and the closing scene. We get Clark and Raven pretty much reeling over the news that Bellamy is dead. And then shortly after that, and they take control, they meet Bill, and Clark recognizes Bill. And this is kind of what jumpstarts the whole flashback thing. And then when we go back to the present day, Bill pretty much asks Clark if Callie was in the flame or in the AI, and Clark claims that she is, but I don't know if she's telling the truth or not, so that's debatable in itself, but we'll get right into that later on. But then the last moments of the episode is Clark demanding Bill for their friends, and it revealing that Octavia, Dios, and Echo are actually dressed up as disciple soldiers yet. I don't see Hope, so I don't know where she's at. But the way that they're standing, the way that they're looking at her friends, has me questioning whether or not they've truly been turned to be part of the disciples, and they're actually one of them now, or if they're just continuing the facade and just biding their time and being undercover kind of thing. I have no idea. So that, because if you have to remember, it's been 3 months for them since they've kind of been under their training, I guess, at least. So that's something there. But let's move on to characters very quickly. We do get Becca Franco again. We find out that she went to Harvard when she was 10. She became a role model for Callie when she was growing up. But they only first meet when Becca comes down back from Polaris. Becca actually hears the humming from the stones and the different frequencies the symbols give off due to the flame amplifying her senses. Also, we find out that she named the AI Ali, which we already knew, but she named the flame specifically because of Prometheus and the legends he played against the gods. So that was something there. Also, we see Becca actually she's the first person to cross through the anomaly bridge when it was taking on this white ball instead of the white light instead of the green light. And when she came back, she was saying like she saw Judgment Day and how she wanted to shut it down so that nobody had access to it, and she said that specifically Bill should not have access to it, and that defiance is what led her to isolation for 5 days. So we still have no idea what she saw when she went through the white version of the bridge that spooked her so much. So that is something there. But then, as we know, she was killed after her 5 days of isolation due to her defiance to give up the flame. And because the reason why they want the flame, though, is because Becca was able to decode the stone's decryption with the flame. And since she won't give it up, they figured if they get it and crack it, they'll have access to it, because she didn't write everything down in her book, which was smart. So that's something there. And then we meet Callie, or Calliope Cadigan, which is the daughter. She's kind of also the black sheep of the family, while she seems to always be the one in defiance. Whenever it's always a family vote, or if the son is always her brother is always following their father, and the mother, despite being at odds with her father, it seems to still see reasoning with the father. So there's that. She definitely bonds with Becca, and she is told the details in Becca's final moments about the flame and how it works, especially parts that she didn't write in the journal about how it needs to work with someone with the night blood serum and not just with anybody due to the frying of the nervous system, which we already knew through trial and error with the flame in season 3 and 4 and 5. We also find out that the shutdown code is actually goodbye for now in Latin, and she tells, and Callie is told that she has to decide who gets the flame next, because the flame amplifies what the person already has within them. So if you got a smart mind in possession of the flame, it could do great things, but then also in the wrong hands, it could be horrible things. So there's that. Then we meet her brother, Reese, who seems to be doing everything he can to get on his father's good side. He even said that Callie could do no wrong in their father's eyes, and kind of a thing. So they have that kind of resentment towards each other. Reese is also Callie gives Reese the night blood serum before she leaves, in hopes that her brother would change his mind and live on the ground with her, as opposed to following their father through an unknown bridge in outer space. Doesn't seem to be the case, since Reese seems to be very loyal to their father. So there's that. Father being Bill Cadigan. As we know, he was very determined to travel through the bridge and very dead set on getting the flame. He even said that he wanted absolutely anything and everything done to get the flame from Callie, where she stole it in the very last minute. But now we know that Bill is actually on Bardo. We don't know if his son is. We don't know who else from this flashback episode was actually still on Bardo, or if he's just the only one. We have to wait and see about that. And then we have Grace, who is the mom. She was not given the night blood serum because she was set to go through the bridge. But because of her defiance, Bill kind of locked her out of the bunker, forcing her to take a hazmat suit and venture out into the radiation-filled topside. She is some kind of doctor. I don't know if she's like a physician or if she's like a psychiatrist. But yeah, there's that. A lot of tension between. So, and I'm also not sure if she's still with Bill or if they were separated or divorced and they kind of had like this split custody between their kids or something. I don't know. But we do got friction there as well. And then we have August, who is musician because he had a guitar on his back, I'm assuming. But then also he was part of the protest riots. And then he claims that he's OG Tree Crew. He has the tattoo, and Tree Crew was meant to be this protest group. So if anything, he could be the start of the Grounder clan in that. So that is something there. And August is... We'll talk about August later, for sure. Let me just get back on track with the names. All right, so there is that. So in regards to tidbits, nothing much, since I did kind of already talk about a lot that I was going to say, but there's actually no cold open in the episode. The episode starts off straight into the title card, and then it goes into Clark and the others on Bardo and reacting to the news about Bellamy. So that's something there. That's the first time ever in the history of the 100 where they don't have an opening sequence before the title card. So that's something there. We also do find out that through Gabriel, he explains that Bardo's search for the key is actually them looking for the flame, or in this case, Becca's AI system. So that is something there. We do also find out that Callie claims that Becca had 2,000 serum vials for Nightblood. I'm questioning that, considering I don't believe she would have had all that in that tiny little suitcase she had, and she only showed that she had one hidden compartment to it, so I have no idea. But that's what she states, and they plan to take the serum with them, and whoever they find on the surface still surviving, they're going to give the injection to them. I don't know how anybody would survive if they didn't already have Nightblood in them, but again, that is something there. That's also probably, hold on, we'll talk about that after. Also, we got possibly the origins of the Conclave fights happening between Callie and Reese, who always settled their arguments with each other with a fight, kind of like the basement, when they would say that if either one of them tapped out, the other one would win the argument. So that could be the origin story there. Also, just want to mention that I did talk about the character posters that feature 6 different symbols. I will post them up on screen right now. But in the episode, Bill and Becca kept referring to 7 symbols and frequencies. And they also kept saying that there's 7 numbers needed for a coordinate in space. And I'm assuming that 6 of these different symbols is part of that. But I have no idea what the 7th symbol is. And then also Becca made a comment about the fact that there are 744 stone symbols. I don't know if it's different symbols or if it's different sequences and like different rearrangements of those 7 different symbols. But that's the number she gave, so I'll leave it at that. Now, this time I won't talk about ship status, but I am going to talk about more of spin-off potential. Just with the way that this... Because again, you have to remember that this started off as a backdoor pilot for a potential spinoff. So I'm trying to think about what would the focus of this spinoff be? It did, Jason Rothenberg did say that the spinoff would be called The 100, I think Second Dawn. I think that's what, yeah, Second Dawn. So that doesn't just mean, like, when I hear that, I'm thinking, well, it's kind of split now. Half of the Second Dawn went through the bridge with Bill, and the other half of the Second Dawn went with Callie to live on the surface with the new Nightblood serum. So if this spinoff were to continue, I could see it having a split division between following Callie and her creating the Grounder culture that we know from our characters, and then the other half would be following Bill and his space travels that would ultimately lead him to Bardo and to who we know of him now. You know what I mean? And developing that disciple mythology that that we've heard so far from the other Bardo followers. So I can see it that way. If that's the case, with Earth, the only storylines I could see so far that they've already pit was Callie needing to find the next host for the flame if she does not take it herself. There's also the formation of the 12 clans. I'm assuming August would be leading for Tree Crew. There's also Reese and Tristan teaming up together to find Callie in search for the flame, since they both had the Nightblood serum injected into them that weren't part of the group that left with Callie. And then there's also Gemma with the radiation suit going out and searching for her daughter and trying to get that serum for herself because she isn't protected. So I can see that already going on. There's also the fact that they could be potential partnership between Callie and August. Don't know if that's going to be in a romantic sense or more of similar to what they've been building for Bellamy and Clark in regards to the partnership aspect of it. So that's always a possibility there. Space storylines would have to be Bill discovering the new world that beyond this first bridge jump, or if that initially leads them to Bardo, then it's him trying to build a new society there. Also, I've read that Bardo actually had an alien race there to begin with. So if that's the case, maybe the space storyline will deal with Bill taking his portion of the bunker residents and them having to either assimilate with the original Bardo race or having to conquer them in order to claim the planet for themselves. You know what I mean? So it's a split way of where the focus could be. But based off this episode and what they've kind of set up outside of reaffirming what we already know about the Grounder and everything else we've learned flashback wise, I feel like that's how they could continue the spin-off off. But I'll talk more about that later on. But let's move on to the most shocking moment of the episode. I think for me, the most shocking moment was the reveal of Octavia, Echo, and Diosa actually being part of the Disciples. A part of me kind of did think that they would be coming out as resisting hostages being escorted in by soldiers, but to have them walk out unarmed in their own gear and presenting themselves as soldiers for Bardo was probably the shock for me. So that's something there. But let's move on to parallels very quickly. There is quite a few. I did stumble on the fact that you could technically call a parallel between Callie and Clark in regards to roaming the Earth for any other survivors. Clark had to do that at the end of season 4 in the 6 years that she was alone, or technically the first month or so that she was alone before she found Maddie. It's kind of the similar premise that Callie is hoping that her and the others will search the Earth for other survivors and give them the serum that they need, kind of a thing. I don't see how anyone could survive without the serum, so we'll have to wait and see about that. But that was one I just thought about now when I was talking about that 2,000 serum count. But the other parallel, initially you could say, is happening at the bunker's hatch door, and that is when it was Callie versus Reese, paralleling the standoff that happened between Bellamy and Clark at the end of season 4. I think it was in 4:12 that was happening, where Bellamy was trying to open the hatch so he can get to Octavia and the others, and Clark held a gun to him, saying, no, you can't open that. You could kill the rest of our people that are down here. And ultimately, Clark allowed Bellamy to open the door. But with Callie and Reese, you get the opposite. Callie is begging her brother to allow for them to let the one person that's begging on the door to let them in and help. And Reese refuses, saying, no, they are not allowed in. They don't have a key. They are not a level 12 to be entered. Also, level 12 could be referencing back to Bardo as well. But anyway, so that's a huge parallel there. A very difference in the fact that you got two siblings on opposing ends, and yet you got Bellamy and Clark who come together in the end, kind of a thing. So there's that. You also have another parallel being between the brother-sister dynamic between Callie and Reese and Bellamy and Octavia. Not only the fact that you get Callie and Reese pretty much on opposite ends throughout this whole episode. The only one time that they were on the same side was briefly when Callie first arrived at the bunker and we got to see Reese for the first time interacting with his sister. I don't count that phone call because he wasn't technically in the room. So otherwise, they're on opposite ends. But with Bellamy and Octavia, we know how very tight-knit they are. Yes, they've had their up and downs over the years, but they've always had each other's backs. Already with the introduction of Callie and Reese, you see that they do not have each other's backs. So that's a huge parallel between them. Plus, also, they're the only other siblings we have actually come to know on the 100, right? So that's a huge thing right there. But moving on to top 3 favorite moments, I actually only have one favorite. Is the fact that we got a lot of callbacks to the different origins of the Grounder culture, finding out that the language actually came from Callie as a made-up language she had as a child. The fact that we got the whole tree crew mention, the fact that we have the basement fights might be reference to the conclave, the fact that we have the 12th level of the cult might be the 12 levels that Hope was talking about with the disciple symbols. We have callbacks to Becca's time on Polaris, how she dropped down and became the first, and then also reaffirming the creation of the flame and Alley 2.0 and everything like that. So I really like all the different tie-ins that we've come to learn over the previous 6 seasons, and how they were able to tie into this a prequel moment, which I truly appreciate it, because that's just reaffirming mythology that you have already set for your show, and I'm all for that. So that is something there. Problem is, though, that was my only favorite. I did have a lot of issues with this episode, which makes my peeves a lot bigger. And I will just put it out there that my issue is not the fact that our characters were barely featured. Coming into this episode, I was already prepared that I was going to barely see any of our normal characters. I already knew that coming in. But with that known, I am very confused by the fact that in present day, Bill is the one telling Clark and the others about 2052 and the first Prime Fire and what happened. Okay, that makes sense, but yet the whole time we're in the flashbacks, we are following his daughter Callie, and we are seeing scenes where Bill is not even a part of. So how can he be telling these moments to Clark and the others if he was never a part of it? I would understand it a lot better if it was Callie talking to Clark and the others in the present, and then we're seeing her in the past reliving all these moments. Then it would make sense for me why and how our characters would be given this information about the past in the same way that we as the audience are experiencing it. Because me right now, me the audience seeing this makes sense for us. But I don't understand how Clark and the others would be retaining the same information as us, the audience, were getting through Bill's retelling, because he wasn't there for a lot of the scenes that Callie was just in it without him. You know what I mean? So that's kind of a little hard to connect, because essentially, if someone is telling you a story, then you would expect that character telling the story to be featured in the story we're telling. So another thing I could say, for example, is, say for the Vampire Diaries, when in season 5, episode 509, Damon and Elena are locked in a cell. Sorry, spoiler, but Damon is telling Elena his flashback moment of when he was last a prisoner in the Augustine Society. And the flashbacks in the episode featured Damon and his time in that society. That makes sense because it's Damon telling his own flashback of what had happened. It would have made it a lot more difficult for Damon to tell the story of Stefan's time in the Augustine Society if Damon was never featured in that flashback. You know what I mean? So, like, the person telling the story and then whoever's featured in that story need to be connected. Otherwise, it just makes no sense for me to know, how does Bill know that Callie had a conversation with Becca? How did they connect? Or, like, how did Callie have a moment with August before they were trying to get out of the hatch? Or how did they react to their scavenging moment when they saw the Polaris pod come down? How would Bill know any of that if he was never present for those moments? And yet he's telling those moments to Clark. Because I'm also assuming that everything that I am seeing in the flashback is being retold to Clark and the others. Otherwise, what's the whole point in cutting back to them in the tale of, like, what happens? Because then, if that's not the case, I'm going to be left questioning, well, okay, what did we actually learn? Is that being translated to Clark and the others actually knowing? Right? You know what I mean? So that just makes it a huge peeve of mine, because now I have that huge disconnect. So that is something there. Another peeve I did have was Callie herself. Right off the bat, when the missiles first dropped, I already did not like her. I did not like the fact that she was, like, yes, her loyalty to her best friend was great, but the fact that she wanted to go out of the bunker and find her friend was just completely idiotic to me because of the fact that she took a damn helicopter to get to that bunker. What makes her think that she's going to go find her friend and bring her back in time where she's not already dead from the radiation? That just made no sense to me, and that's what made me not like her character at all. Her only redeeming grace was actually seeing her 2 years later and actually see her doing a plan, having a plan, and having steps to take action before she actually does the plan itself. So instead of actually trying to open the bunker with no way to survive, she actually has a way to survive through the serum. She actually has people to back it up, and she has more of a plan before she even opens the hatch. You know what I mean? So I feel like if they didn't have that 2-year time jump, Callie would just been one character I would have not have been willing to follow in a spin-off whatsoever, which would have killed it for me. Another peeve I had was the fact that Becca was killed off. Yes, I already knew originally that she was killed. It makes sense. But for the fact that they're trying to do a spin-off, I'm a little disappointed that she's not going to be included in that potential spin-off. I feel like if Becca was part of the creation of the grounder culture and part of trying to rebuild society, a different society on the ground during this post-Prime Fire, I would have been a lot more interested in that. The only hope I can have for Becca being included in the spin-off is if someone else took the flame and we kind of have her being like a co-pilot to whoever this new commander is, because kind of like what we got in season 3 with Jaha having Ali 2.0 kind of being his co-pilot. But also with that, it's like with Becca always being called the first commander, I kind of assumed that she was the actual start of the grounder culture, that she put these things into place and that she was part of the start for that. But then to find out she didn't even survive enough to see Callie and the others go start that is very disappointing for me. And another thing, it's just a side peeve because of the fact that August, I have no issue with him, except for he's played by Leo Howard. Again, I have no issue, but Leo was also supposed to be, he was advertised to be this big, much bigger character on Legacy Season 2 as Ethan. And I had so much high hopes that they would bring him in and have him more connected to the Salvatore students, Salvatore boarding school students, and have him play a much bigger game. Because the last time we see him in Season 2 was he was in the cemetery scene very close to one of the monsters of the episode. And yet that's the last time we see and hear any mention of him when he was advertised to be such a bigger key player in the season. And yet the peeve I have is that if this gets greenlit and Leo continues to play August, which is great because I would love to get to know August a little more, that would just mean that his time as Ethan on Legacies is now done for, because like there's no way they're going to be filming at the same time, or he's not going to be filming both at the same time. So it just feels like I either get him on one show or the other. One show I already know him as Ethan, I expected more and hoped more out of that character, but if he's going to actually continue on with August in this spinoff, if it gets picked up, then that means all my hopes for Ethan are going to be cut short, and I now have to get to know August, which is no bad mouth against August. It's just as a fan of his character on another show, now going to be affected by him playing a different character. It's just one of those side peeves that had nothing to do with the actual episode, but more to do with the fate of the show itself, kind of a thing. But yeah, that's just here or there. So that is something there. I'm going a lot longer than I thought I would, but let's go into random questions very quickly, and then I'll give my final thoughts about the what I thought about the spinoff idea. But first random question would be, if Bill and Reese found out about the flame through Becca's journal, and assuming her scribbles about the anomaly stone, I'm also wondering why they didn't just confiscate the Nightblood serums and how Callie was still in possession of them if they were able to get her journal. Like, I don't get that since they were both in the same briefcase. So, like, that is not connecting for me. Another question was, if all the people that lived on Earth that had Nightblood alteration left the bunker to go topside, I don't understand why all their descendants didn't have Nightblood as well. Or has it been ruled out that it's not a genetic trait that's passed down through the children, but it's something more of a random occurrence that appears in the bloodline? Because I'm still stuck on that, because that's still kind of the issue I'm having with Sanctum and how they view. Because in both the Grounder culture and Sanctum believers, they've all stated that Nightblood is, or royal blood, Nightblood, is something that is a rare occurrence in the population. And yet, we've seen it in both times how it can be man-made, and in order for all of them to survive, they had to have had that blood alteration. And if that blood alteration is a genetic thing, I would assume that if it's a thing of whether it's a dominant recessive, as which name mentioned it? As I have the name. As Elvis mentioned in the comment, where they named the Nightblood as recessive, red blood as being a mix, and the regular blood being the dominant, that it's just that the way I was taught about genetics long time ago was the fact that it was always something that was passed down, especially if it's recessive and dominant. So if you have two recessives coming together, their children are all going to be recessive, because you don't have any of the dominant genes to pass down. But if you had a dominant and a recessive together, you kind of have a half and half split of your children either having the dominant trait or your children having the recessive trait. But now if you have two dominants together, there can either be the chance where both dominants are truly dominant and they have no ounce of the recessive in them, so therefore their children would have no ounce of the recessive in them, or the two dominants would actually be a mix. So again, half their children would be dominant or half the children would be recessive. I'll actually put a graph that I always learned up on screen about the combinations of what pairings could bring out the traits. So with that minimal learning of genetics from grade 11 biology that always stuck with me, I'm still trying to figure out how the whole Nightblood actually naturally occurring should have taken hold, because if everyone was injected with the Nightblood, theoretically I would think that any children they have had would have been Nightblood as well to continue it forward. And yet we don't see that happening in Sanctum. We do not see it with the current day Grounders that we've met. So I'm still thinking, what the hell? Like, how is that? Do I have to go back to my science books? Do I have to wait? Or has it just not been confirmed? Or is it really one of those random occurrences in the bloodline in that anybody could have it popping up again? I have no idea. So that is something there as well that will always be confusing to me, and it's always going to be a random question. Another question is Bill aware of Maddie, or do they still believe that Clark has the flame inside of her? That is a question I still have. I think I mentioned it in one of the 4 comments that I answered before the episode today. But that's my question, because the way that Bill was talking to Clark, it made it seem like he believed that Callie had been in possession of the flame to the point that she actually was a vessel for the flame. And also that Clark, if the way that he understood it is that Clark still has access, therefore he could still talk to Callie through Clark if Clark still had the flame. But all our characters know that Maddie had it before they destroyed it due to Shaheda. So I'm wondering if Bill is even aware about Maddie, or if he still believes that Clark has the flame and that's why they keep calling her the key. Or if Octavia left it out in her memory capture sessions, if she left Maddie out completely. You know what I mean? So that is something there. And then my last question was, who is Callie? Bill mentions it to Clark at the very beginning. He mentions Callie, and then he mentions Calliope. We found out that Calliope is his daughter. Initially, I thought Callie was her best friend, but that ends up being Lucy. So I don't know who Callie is. I don't know. I originally thought Callie was his daughter, but it's not. So I have no idea who he's talking about. Maybe I misheard it. Please let me know. It does happen in the very first scene of the episode. So just please let me know about that. Now, with all that said and done, what do I think about the idea of a spin-off? I am always open to a spin-off if it means us continuing the characters forward that maybe we don't normally see on our show and expanding the universe a little bit more. My issue, though, the fact that it is a prequel spin-off. For me, I have an issue with prequels because of the fact that you're just telling me stuff that eventually I already know is going to end up in one place. And it's like, what's the point in that? The biggest example I can give is the Star Wars Han Solo film that was supposed to be a prequel. I didn't see it, so I don't know the extent, but all I know is the fact that it's supposed to take place with a younger version of Han Solo. For me, the whole reason why that idea doesn't even work for me is because I know that Han Solo is going to live because he gets older and is seen in the whole Star Wars franchise. So there's no true risk in the prequel. I already know where the prequel is eventually going to end because that's where the rest of the franchise takes place. So it's a little bit harder whenever a prequel is given to me because then it's like, unless it's truly emphasizing a different aspect of the show, then I can get behind it. But I think I'd have to watch it to get the true thought about it. For my thoughts of it right now is I'm a little bit 50-50. On the one hand, that prequel thing is not really doing it for me because a lot of stuff that was revealed in this Backdoor pilot is stuff that just reaffirms what we've known for the past 6 seasons about the first Prime Fridays, which just got reaffirmed. But the other half does want to know like how it was all created and how did things span out to be what we find out it was 100 years later. But then at the same time, it's like, eventually I'm going to know that these factions deviate from each other. I'm eventually going to know that this turns bloody. I'm eventually going to know that I don't know. So I don't know 50-50 on it. I would love to hear in the comments down below what you guys think about the idea of the spinoff. Are you guys sold on the idea? Is this having you have second thoughts about it? I definitely will check out the pilot if they do get greenlit for sure. But due to COVID, I don't think it's going to be for the next television season. It might be for the one after that. But yeah, I'd be very interested to hear what you guys have to say about your own thoughts about the idea of a spinoff happening during this time. But otherwise, predictions in regards to the promo for the next episode, I picked up there's some friction between Indra and Shaheda. I saw Anders talking about serving the purpose of humanity. I saw kill simulations occurring for Echo, Octavia, and Dioza, who reacts violently to it. So that could be their 3 months of training to be Bardo soldiers. I don't know. It was very fast paced for the promo. I had to watch it a second time to even pick up what I just did. So we'll have to wait and see about that. But the synopsis, though, for the question reads that Murphy and Indra must defuse a tense situation, and then meanwhile, old friends make new alliances. So Murphy and Indra might have to deal with the children of Gabriel and Allegiance 3 convicts teaming up together and I think they took Amori as their hostage, and maybe that's the situation they have to defuse. Meanwhile, old friends make new allegiances. That could either be Clark and the others having to deal with Octavia, Echo, and Dioza and their questionable loyalties, because we don't know if they're truly with the disciples or if they're just undercover biding their time, or if it's actually making new alliances with Bill, and who knows. So maybe we will be split between Earth and Bardo in different aspects, but I can't wait to see how they do it. But otherwise, that's pretty much it, guys. So what did you guys think of this episode? What did you guys like about it? What do you think will happen next? Let me know in the comments down below. Love to hear your own thoughts, theories, and opinions about what you think will happen in the next episode, what you think will happen in the remaining episodes of the final season, plus also your thoughts about this potential spinoff. Did you like it? Do you like the idea? Do you hate the idea? Do you think it was a good premise that they were showcasing in this Backdoor pilot? Please let me know. I'm very interested. It's very interesting to kind of think of it this way while taking my screenwriting program. So I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about it. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos if you haven't done so already. If you want, check out my Tumblr page. Link for that is down below. I read blog promos, web clips, quotes, gifs, synopses, news, all that good stuff, all found in one place. Go check that out. I am a little behind, and I just remembered now that I should probably go update that before I start classes again on Monday. But yeah, also WordPress account, link for that is down below. Anything I post online is connected to WordPress. A little more organized, a little more detailed, still a work in progress, but it's all there. Again, because of schooling and life itself, school has definitely taken up a lot of my time. So it's not, I used to be on Tumblr like every day before I got a job and before I started school. And then time just got away from me. So I do have to go back into it and really update a lot of stuff, but please check that out. A lot of things, I'm pretty particular and organized over that. So check that out. Otherwise, guys, that is pretty much it. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your patience. I'm sorry I went a lot longer than I thought I would. And it's coming up to be pretty much as long as the episode itself. But I hope you guys liked or mull over my own interpretation of the episode. I still think it was a much needed episode that we needed. But it did have its issues that I had in regards to how it was told. It'd be interesting to see if you guys had issues the same way I had issues, or if you had issues for other things, or vice versa. If you liked other things that I didn't, please let me know. I'd love to hear about it. But yeah, I'm just going to end it there. I can already feel it in my throat. So guys, until next time, this is Mel. Wish you all a great day, great week, wherever you are. Bye for now.